to this episode of Shonen Flop, where we talk about manga series in Shonen Jump that didn't make it big. I'm David.
I'm Jordan.
This week, we're talking about Look Back, and we're joined by our guest, our own Geoff Thew of Mother's Basement.
It's Geoff Thew.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You said Jethro?
I'll take Jethro. It's a good name.
Got my made-up Jeff variation names.
David's like, your name is silly. First thing on the fucking podcast already. God damn it, David.
I have trouble with, TH noises, so that might have also been...
You're fine.
Just say Jeff. It's all good. It's all good.
He's never gonna talk to us again. Geoff, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell the audience just a quick little spiel about yourself?
No, I'm just kidding. So I talk about anime and occasionally other stuff like the precise isekai levels of Space Jam, for example, on my YouTube channel, Mother's Basement.
I liked that video, yeah.
Sorry. It's a very hot day. I live in Vancouver. That's another thing you can know about me. Today's would be our record highest heat wave ever if we hadn't had our record highest heat wave ever 2 weeks ago.
Oh, God.
That's what's going on with me. What I do is, like I said, I talk about anime and video games on my channel, Mother's Basement. Kind of started as knockoff of Every Frame of Painting, but for anime, specifically anime openings. And then, I kind of just branched off from there, and I make whatever I think is funny or interesting and hope that people will also find that funny and or interesting. Pretty standard YouTube content strategy, all things considered.
What else can you do besides make things you think are good and hope other people share your ideas, And yeah, for what it's worth, I also think your stuff is good and funny. So, hey, we're on the same wavelength here, I guess,
Well, shucks.
You are definitely in the Hall of Fame of guests whose content I actively watched before being on the show.
Oh, well, thank you.
Jordan listens to a ton of really obscure podcasts, so we have a lot of guests on that are awesome, but I'm I have never listened to your podcast before we found out you were going to be our guest.
For the other people, obviously. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's go into the manga details. Geoff, we wanted to cover this part. I'm excited to hear you talk about it. Let's go.
Look Back is a manga by Tatsuki Fujimoto, the creator of one of the Shonen Jump's biggest breakout hits over the last few years, Chainsaw Man.
Never heard of that series.
Jordan, shut up. We literally have a component at the end of every show saying, how does this series compare to Chainsaw Man?
Well, that's good. At the end of this episode, you might have the first one that's better, but perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself. So, yeah, if you're not familiar with Tatsuki Fujimoto's work, you will be in approximately 6 months or whenever the MAPPA show drops, at which point you will not be able to get away from it. You think Attack on Titan is ubiquitous? Baby, you have no idea.
I thought you were going to be like, you will in 6 minutes, because we're about to talk about a series he just made, or a one-shot he just made.
That too. Fujimoto, Chainsaw Man is definitely his biggest thing, but before that, he made a series called Fire Punch, which is the most batshit insane manga I think I've ever read.
Yep.
The first chapter, you've got a guy with Wolverine's healing factor who has grown up providing food to his entire village by chopping off his and his sister's limbs on a regular basis, but they grow back, so it's fine, and that's just how apocalyptic this world be. By the end of that chapter, he has been lit on fire forever with magic mutant fire that won't go out until it completely burns him up, which obviously will never happen because he's got a healing factor, and he uses that to take revenge on everyone. And from there, it gets substantially weirder. Let's not even get into the Star Wars stuff.
I was about to mention the Star Wars.
I had to read Fire Punch. I got a few chapters in and I was like, whoa, this is way more fucked up than I was expecting.
Yeah, I wonder when Fuji, Shonen Jump was like, do you want to make a shonen manga? He was like, you can trust me, and he winked at him.
What makes less sense is that somehow Chainsaw Man got, even more brutal.
Yep.
More sensical, too. I would say that plot makes substantially more sense. And people who've read Chainsaw Man right now are, looking at their screens or just staring out and being like, how is... What?
Well, the other thing about Chainsaw Man, which in comparison to Fire Punch that I noticed, is I feel like after he made Fire Punch, he was like, there was a lot of periods where there just was not enough levity. I think that Denji just being, like, at many times such a happy-go-lucky guy despite all the horrible things that are happening allow you to, like, swallow the brutality that's going on. Because, like, well, Denji's still doing all right, so, like, I don't know, I won't be, like, super broken up or devastated as quite as much because Denji seems to be handling it in stride.
The shonen protag attitude really does take the edge off. I wouldn't describe Fire Punch as lacking in levity, because Fire Punch is hilarious, but Fire Punch is hilarious on, like, a very specific B-movie so bad it's good vibe that, like, he works really hard to create, and, like, once you, like, click into it, you're like, okay, the main character's an incest cannibal because that's the most ridiculous thing he could possibly come up with, not because he thinks it's really the most compelling way to tell a story. And, like, once you clue in that it's, like, trying to do the Grindhouse B-movie thing and just, like, throw every ridiculous and offensive idea it can at the wall at once in, like, an entertaining way, it's very funny, but it's definitely not funny in the way that Chainsaw Man is immediately and continuously funny. Yeah. And you're probably right that he, like, learned a lesson in just, like, making his manga more accessible from how that was. And what's really interesting about Look Back, which is a one-shot, 145 chapter single, 145 chapter. A one-shot...
That's my bad. I wrote chapter by accident.
Yeah, I was looking at your notes. I was like, 145. I'm just going to give away that these notes say one shot, but it's 145 pages, so extra thick. Yeah, so it's a one shot, 145 page single chapter. Will probably be released as one high value tankobon at some point in the future.
Yeah.
I really hope they put it out in, like, a big one, like they did with Thus Spoke Rohan Kishibe, you know, like, so that you can get the full Shonen Jump spread experience from it. Because just to spoil some things, I'm going to say later, it is a masterclass in paneling, page composition, shot composition, artwork. Everything that you could possibly want to be good in a manga is good here. Fujimoto spent essentially the last year since Chainsaw Man wrapped working on the next stage of Chainsaw Man whenever that drops and making this one shot. Imagine what somebody who has been producing 19 pages of the best comic in the most competitive comic magazine for 2 years straight every week, right, can do with a year to put together just 145.
He fucking used all that time, yeah.
This released on July 18th, 2021. I believe it was a trending topic the day it came out. People were, like, really excited about it for obvious reasons. I've reread it 3 or 4 times since it came out just because it's so good. I cry every time.
Oh, same.
I actually teared up when I was reading this.
Part of the reason for that is that it channels through a different tragedy that's, like, very distinct but has some of the same elements. A lot of the collective trauma experienced by anime and manga fans and obviously people in the industry and artists in general working in Japan in the wake of the KyoAni arson attack. And it was released on the 2-year anniversary of that attack just to hammer home what it's about.
I would love to continue along that line of thought, but, like, let me get into the plot so that, like, the listener understands, like, what we're talking about. Everyone knows.
All right. Yeah,
everyone knows. You're gonna interrupt me every fucking time I start, David. God, shut up. Everyone knows that Fujino
yeah,
is...
David, shut up.
Yeah, David, stop interrupting.
Damn it, David, yet again.
Everyone knows that Fujino is the best comic artist in the 4th grade. That is, until the work of a Trant girl named...
How did you say that?
Kiyomoto.
No, you said Trant? I thought it was Truant.
It is Truant.
Oh.
No, a Treant girl named Kiyomoto. An Entwife makes manga.
Listen, I can't say words. Jordan knows this. This is why Jordan took over pronunciation duty for things.
Well, why don't I start over then, David? Let the fucking professional do it, all right?
Fine, go for it.
Everyone knows that Fujino is the best comic artist in the 4th grade. That is, until the work of a truant girl named Kiyomoto starts getting printed alongside Fujino's in the school newspaper with art that just completely blows hers out of the water. At first, she tries to improve before eventually giving up drawing altogether. A couple months later, she is asked to deliver an elementary school graduation certificate to Kiyomoto, who turns out to be such a huge fan of her old comics that they decide to collaborate on a manga.
The two get a lot of praise, including an honorable mention in Shonen Jump itself. But to Fujino's chagrin, I know I almost fucked that up again, Kiyomoto decides to break up their team to go to art school. Fujino continues working, becoming a highly successful mangaka with her series Shark Kick, when she sees a news broadcast about a massacre at Kiyomoto's art school, where a mentally ill man went on a rampage, killing her friend with a pickaxe.
Fujino blames herself for her friend's death, traveling back to Kiyomoto's house and reminiscing about how she misses her friend and how much they loved working together. She dejectedly imagines a world where she was able to save Kiyomoto's life by defeating the killer. Returning to the present, she goes back to her office and continues working on manga. It's super worth noting that the trigger for that is toward the middle of the story as they're embarking on their career. She says to Kiyomoto, just follow my back and you'll become a great artist. And then the two things that make her realize she needs to get back off hiatus and keep making manga are, one, seeing her old jacket. She had a jacket emblazoned with her name. I forget the name of the type of jacket. It's a specific Japanese piece of clothing.
Yeah.
So her jacket that she was always drawing in is hanging on the back of Kiyomoto's door because every day that Kiyomoto was drawing, she was looking at her friend's back.
Looking back.
Yeah!
Oh, shit!
Title drop. What is this, some sort of look back?
Fujimoto, you fucking god.
Fucking Chadamoto.
Absolute god. And the other thing is the realization that Kiyomoto was waiting eagerly for every next chapter of Shark Kick because Kiyomoto is and always has been Fujino's biggest fan.
So we mentioned the arson attack. This is very clearly meant to be a tribute because there's a lot of similarities between the two events. Do you think Fujimoto had a friend there, or is this more like just a general
feeling for the industry?
Yeah.
So I don't know how actually personal it is. I have a feeling that it's not as autobiographical as it seems.
I think that there is a huge autobiographical aspect to it, obviously. I mean, the main characters' names, Fujino and Kiyomoto, obviously they make up Fujimoto.
And then the first part of Kiyomoto is Kiyo.
That is very direct.
I do also want to say, you mentioned Fujimoto's a workhorse, and Fujino, the way that she essentially handles the grief from her friend's death is to just go back to her office and just keep working on the manga that she and her friend loved making and that her friend loved so much. It's just the scene at the very end where it's so underplayed, understated, where she's just working at her desk is incredibly powerful. I also want to say the previous episode of Shonen Flop, the previous manga that we have covered where we determined this is the best series that we have read for this is Time Paradox Ghostwriter, which is also a series where a manga artist and author makes a series about being an artist. I love when manga artists do this because you can tell they're pulling from very real feelings. I am an artist myself. I went to art school. I've been drawing all my life. And a lot of the shit they were talking about and how you feel, you grow up and everybody around you tells you, oh, you're amazing. You're the best artist ever. Holy shit. And then you start meeting actually really fucking good artists and you're like, damn, I suck. Everyone's full of shit. They're lying to me. They just don't have good taste. I fucking suck. And now I want to stop. It was an incredibly relatable moment.
Imposter syndrome all the way down.
Yeah.
On the subject of how autobiographical this is, I think Fujino and Kiyomoto's strengths as artists obviously correspond pretty well to what Fujimoto is good at as an artist.
Yeah.
And what he relies on assistance for, the backgrounds. I don't know. I need to look more into what Fujimoto's process is. I don't know how much of that has been publicized so far, but it just fascinates me. Because obviously Fujino and Kiyomoto both have parts of Fujimoto's name, it stands to reason that they both represent an aspect of him as a creator. So maybe what's being said here is that seeing that happen made a part of Fujimoto die. Chainsaw Man was always really dark and fucked up.
Yeah.
But like around the time of that attack, I think it got even darker and more fucked up. I think a lot of stuff got channeled into there from that collective trauma. I mean, Fujimoto probably knew artists who worked at Kyoto Animation.
Absolutely.
I'll see if I can find just what arc it was at. But one thing in particular, I really appreciate that you brought up how the characters seem to represent different pieces of themselves. Something I kind of got a vibe from was that Fujino kind of represents maybe the like writing creativity, while Kimoto represents more of the actual true like artistic talent. And that's kind of how they divvied up their skill set when they were collaborating.
Pretty sure Fujino is Japanese for like sentence.
Oh, wow.
It's interesting because if you look at their... we're getting into the characters now anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Fujino, when you compare the two, she's... her art is mostly based on the writing. Like, she has stick figures, she has, like, goofy-looking characters.
It's worth noting that her sense of humor is amazing.
Oh, it's great.
Like, every 4-koma that is, like, put in this manga, because there's a few manga within the manga, is just, like, it kills me.
There's one where, like, a boyfriend and girlfriend are about to die due to an accident, and they're like, we'll kiss each other when or find each other when we're reincarnated. And then it's like, oh, we reincarnated, and there's a meteor coming to destroy the Earth.
No, one of them is the meteor, and one of them is the Earth, and they're gonna kiss.
By the way, if you guys are curious, so it was actually around the time of like when Beam shows up is around the time when the accident happened. So I wonder if that is a deliberate
Shark kick, you mean? Is that what you think that's like a deliberate?
Yeah, so that's around the time when Beam first shows up and they do the training and they have to do Operation Super Smart is around the time when the accident occurred.
So the training where they just keep dying over and over again.
Yeah.
Another thing I thought was really cool about Fujino is she starts out and all the middle schoolers like, oh, you're so cool. And what I like is when she's trying to get better because she gets like intimidated by Kiyomoto's skill as like a challenge, is that she gets a bunch of art books, and they're art books. Like, I didn't have those exact art books, but I had those art books. Perspective for artists, anatomy for artists, you know, they're all like stock books that you just get if you're a kid who wants to become a good artist. Like, so many aspects of this were just very clearly Fujimoto talking about maybe not himself as a person, but the process of becoming a good artist.
It always takes a lot of practice and a lot of work.
And self-destruction.
You have to give up a lot of stuff that you love to pursue a talent like that to the point where it becomes a viable career.
Speaking of which, Geoff, would you like to talk about like the personification of kind of spending way too much time on your hobby, aka Kiyomoto?
Yeah, so Kiyomoto is a shut-in who spends basically all of her time practicing drawing. She doesn't go to school. She just focuses on her art. She's still doing well enough to graduate, so I guess she's doing work at home. She's like all in on being an artist, and not just like a manga artist. She's very specific that she wants to create these like intensely detailed paintings and drawings, one of which will look very familiar to Chainsaw Man fans.
Oh, I don't think I picked up on this one.
In the last flashback to her art school, take note of what she is painting.
Oh my god. What I really liked about Kiyomoto's, the fact that she draws backgrounds, is it points to the fact that, you know, she was just stuck in her room, and all she kind of had were the walls and the outside window, and she seems to be very afraid of painting people. Like, she doesn't like to look at people. Like, it's intimidating to her. So by drawing only the backgrounds, it kind of symbolizes that she stands in the background, while Fujino only does the foreground elements. So it's like, oh, she's very much like about the more overt stuff while she misses the stuff that's around her.
Fujino also, like, wants attention, clearly. Whereas Kiyomoto is just all about creating stuff and working with people she thinks is cool. What I think's really interesting is, like, Fujino is, like, intimidated by how good Kiyomoto's art is. But, like, Kiyomoto, and I think this is true of a lot of the most talented artists out there, Kiyomoto just, like, sees what's good in Fujino's art. She's a fan. Even though Fujino's art is, like, very middle school level at the start, and still pretty middle school level by the time they meet, she just admires her imagination and, you know, her ability to draw expressive characters and stuff like that. Reading between the lines, you can sort of like see what's good about that. And like Kyomoto focuses on that with other people, but like is intensely critical of her own shit. Whereas Fujino is like always, if she can't say my shit's the best, she just won't talk.
Yeah.
And when she admires somebody else's work, it's like quietly from afar and with a little bit of resentment.
Jeff, are you familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Yes.
For those who aren't familiar with it, it's the idea that people who are better at something tend to think that they're worse at it because they're more aware of what it means to be really good at it, whereas people who aren't very good at something are more susceptible to thinking that they're better than they are just because they're not as knowledgeable on the art itself.
That's why you always say you're the worst co-host in the world.
Yes, you get it, David. It's because I'm actually the fucking best.
He really needed that one to hear that
finally,
today, Jeff.
Yeah. Tell me I'm the worst more.
I'm not going to call you a bad boy on this podcast.
Oh, but I'm so bad.
By the way, just one detail that I noticed in particular about this whole like background, foreground character thing is there was a really interesting scene when they actually are out in the snow and Fujino is like, you can just watch my back. And it actually shows Kyomoto where she is kind of in the background. So she's kind of not drawn as clearly. But when they switch perspective to Kyomoto saying, you're right, I'll do that, Fujino actually doesn't become blurry. She still remains in focus. So they share the focus rather than switching focus, which I thought was a really interesting visual metaphor for the nature of their personalities.
I have to reread this like a few more times because there is just so much stuff that just sticks out every time I reread it, which is, I mean, hell, that's the mark of a good fucking piece of literature, you know?
The depth in it is just remarkable.
Yeah.
We said in the Chainsaw Man episode, this is like really the main Shonen Jump series I feel like I could write like, you know, like a 10-page lit paper for a college class on.
God, absolutely. Fujimoto has a real legitimate literary skill.
Fujimoto, what strikes me about their work is that they're not just doing genre pastiche when they hit on a send-up of Sharknado or something like that. They're actually like referencing it the way that classic literature references other classic literature.
Totally know what you mean, because like when we first see the 4-panel comic that she makes about how, we're about to die due to an accident, we see that exact same panel again after Kyomoto has actually died due to an accident. And so there is sort of a reincarnation there like the comic, except it's an imagined one.
Yeah.
By the way, I think these are a lot of really good positives. Do you mind if we just talk real quickly about what it doesn't do well, and then we can really get into more detail about all the strengths of the series?
Yeah, David, tell me about why this manga actually sucks.
All right, so I'll do that right now. So this one definitely is nitpick central, because this, I would say, is nothing short of a masterpiece, and I don't think you guys would be hard-pressed to disagree with me on that statement, especially because I think Geoff called it a masterpiece before, so I'll assume his opinion has not changed throughout this recording.
Yes.
So really, there's minor things like the art, like sometimes the faces look a little weird and they're just like not drawn to the same level of clarity. It was like weird in the first few pages, but really the biggest thing I think ultimately is this chapter has a very large learning curve to actually getting the full effect of his writing. You have to really have probably read a lot of manga, or you need to understand Chainsaw Man or Fire Punch to really understand why this is such a masterpiece. And that's nothing, I think, as a fault to the creator, and I wouldn't have him change anything, but it is just a statement of that is something that is a weakness of this, where you can't have someone who's never read manga before read this and fully understand why it's so great.
I don't know if I totally agree with that. This is a strong enough story where I really do think that this could be read without having any knowledge, and you would still get the emotional impact. But you are correct. Like, Jeff, I went back and saw what Kyomoto was painting, and my mind is fucking blown now. I don't know if I can continue this recording. I have to lie down. But...
Do you mind telling the audience what it was?
She's painting the door from Chainsaw Man. No, I do think you get more out of having an understanding of Chainsaw Man and stuff, but like the broad strokes and the literary aspect of it is strong enough where it can stand on its own. And I will also say, my first reading of this chapter, I liked it a lot, but yeah, I don't think I really appreciated it until my second read through. Because the second time, it's like you just start picking up on all the subtleties and all the implications and everything in the lines and the overall kind of thing. And by the end of my second reading, I was just like, oh, this is fucking incredible. This is fantastic.
Did anyone else read this while listening to Don't Look Back in Anger? Because that's what I did on my third reread, is I just put it on loop, and it really added to the experience, to be honest.
I haven't done that, but I will try that now, because that seems like a good idea.
That's my next read-through, yeah.
Aren't we supposed to be talking about what it doesn't do well still?
I will mention kind of the only thing that, like, we do have to talk about is the fact that it does have, at the end, the bad guy who kills Kiyomoto is kind of presented as, like, a generic guy with schizophrenia or some kind of severe mental illness, where he thinks that the art that they're putting out was ripping off his own ideas, which is reflective of the actual event. It still is, like, kind of a little problematic to just present, like a scary mentally ill person. It's hard to do it without doing that, because I think it also ties into some of the symbolism in the series. Like, I think he works through it pretty well. I should also mention, in printings of this in Japan, they have taken that part out. He no longer makes explicit mention to being somebody with schizophrenia or somebody who is having like a severe mental illness episode, which I totally understand. I'm not sure whether or not it detracts from it. It's one of those things where it's hard to change one thing without changing a bunch of other things when you have a series that's actually done well.
I just feel like ultimately, I feel like he was kind of forced to, because this 145 pages is really long for a one-shot like this. When we talked about Twitter, some of the Twitter mangakas were like, what, 145 pages? What the fuck? I think it was just he couldn't give this guy backstory. He couldn't give him motivation. And he was like, this is a cultural zeitgeist shortcut. My dog told me to shoot the president, that kind of stuff. That's just what you have to do, even if it's really just not a very, I would say, politically correct way to handle schizophrenia.
Problematic elements aside, I think that he's not really supposed to be a character. It's supposed to be more of a representation of an idea. Like, the characters are supposed to be Fujino and Kiyomoto. It was very deliberate that all the other characters really are just in the background, because he really wanted to focus on these two characters and their relationship. So the actual motivations of the killer kind of doesn't matter. It's really just the fact that her friend went to art school and then was killed. That's really the point.
Yeah, the killer's side note, which is why I think it's okay to use that shorthand. It is also, like you said, drawing on a real event. The dismissive depiction of, it's just schizophrenia does come from, the news broadcasts in the manga, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
It's not like any of the characters saying, this is how it is. That's just how it's presented. So while it's potentially harmful, I think it's not as harmful as a lot of things that touch on similar subject matter.
Especially because it is based on kind of a real thing. And it's like, if you're going to talk about that story, that is what happened.
That is fair.
It doesn't represent all people with schizophrenia or mental illness in general, but it's not purporting to. It's just a side thing. It is definitely worth noting, and that's probably also to an extent a bad habit picked up from lots and lots of horror media, where that is an extremely common trope.
And I do want to throw out there, just as a statement, even though you do have instances of people with severe mental illness perpetrating violence, the vast majority of the time it is the people with mental illness who face the violence. The vast majority of the time. It's just a couple instances that have stuck in the public zeitgeist,
I think you guys are right. And it's just, to be honest, I'm starting a new job where I'm doing a lot of social awareness, in particular with job hiring for my new job. So maybe it's just I'm just being overly sensitive right now to these kind of struggles people are going through.
No, I think it's absolutely something that should be talked about. I mean, it was clearly enough of an issue where Shonen Jump was you can't say that he is actually mentally ill or stuff, or having a specifically schizophrenic episode.
That's fair. And then, Geoff, did you have any negatives that you feel like you haven't had a chance to discuss yet?
I've really got no complaints about this manga.
So let's talk about why this fucking kicks ass, all right?
So, Geoff, what would you say are really some strengths that really stood out to you about the series?
Everything.
All right, next section.
I definitely agree with the point that, to a certain extent, it can be hard to fully appreciate everything that this manga is doing well. Mm-hmm. I am only using that to transition into talking about how this manga basically takes every single paneling technique that's been developed over the last several decades of shonen manga development. It draws inspiration from everything that's big right now, and a lot of really small, interesting experimental works. It's just a very, very complete look at everything manga has going for it as an art form in the form of a story about making manga. In my Reject Anime Return to Manga video, I spent like 3 or 4 minutes just focusing on like explaining why the paneling in the first 16 pages is so good, and I barely scratched the surface. You could write easily an hour-long video essay just breaking down page by page all of the neat little tricks in this book and still be nowhere near done.
There's just a fantastic moment that I think David also pointed out, where when she discovers that there was an attack on Kiyomoto's art school, there's a moment where Fujino tries to call Kiyomoto, and then you just see it's like she puts it down, indicating that nobody picked up, and then you just see a call from her mom, and then the art style just changes to be sketchier, and it's like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
Just by doing that, you immediately know.
That was by far my favorite moment, was just how she tries and calls, and you just see there's no dialogue. It's just, you see that she didn't pick up, and then she gets a phone call from her mother, and that's all in one page, and that's really a masterclass, where I feel like a lot of authors would have done that in 2 or 3 pages instead of one singular page.
The restraint is amazing. Fujimoto loves going ham with spreads and layouts and stuff like that. Chainsaw Man is just a treat for the eyes in its own way. But this is very restrained and keeps everything within like a very realistic and sensible manga framework for most of its run, while still doing really incredible things. Like Fujino's moment where she like breaks into running in the rain and just is just like dancing in the field. That's one of my favorite spreads in any manga ever.
Yes, that was a great page.
It just like uses the format of like a big, bold shonen manga spread to capture like the excitement of youthful exuberance. It's really clever. There's also, you know, that bookstore scene. She walks into a bookstore, pulls out one book, one sketchbook, and walks back out. That's just like perfect editing. All you need of that scene. And all of that like very restrained, realistic editing sort of unravels as the psychological state of Fujino unravels. And Fujimoto gets into what I think is his best strength toward the end, which is bending space and time in using the page, and just the whole last flashback forward, is it a flashback fantasy sequence that Fujino goes through as she's processing her grief is just like
incredible. It disorients you, but like in a way that is 100% intentional. We're also preparing for an episode on Build King. That series disorients you in ways that it is not meant to disorient you.
That is probably the worst thing we've ever had to read for Shonen Flop. Spoilers.
Something else that I really like about the way that Fujimoto does this, he does a lot of panels where it's just, they're very similar drawings of Fujino sitting at a desk drawing. And what I love about those is all it does is just communicate time is passing and she is working very hard at this. And you get like so much just from those very subtle repetitions.
That's definitely a technique he used a lot in Chainsaw Man. I wouldn't be surprised if he really learned to master it, because that is a time-saving technique as well. Like, looking at the bookstore, I can't tell if he drew it twice, but he definitely didn't need to. And it's just so clever how it lets you reuse art while still giving a sense of kind of a change in mood with the exact same art.
The background is definitely copy-pasted from panel to panel.
It's like he would be dumb not to.
Yeah.
So let's go into the other stuff that this does really well. Fujimoto's always been really good at crafting like very strange characters with bold personalities that resonate on like a really deep and human level. And this is probably his best example of that so far. Like, it focuses on just 2 characters, really one for about 70% of it. And the exploration of those characters is so compelling and complete and deep that, like I said, you can go into this like 4 or 5 times and still be finding something new. It's just really incredible character writing.
To tie into that, I also appreciate that this series was definitely the most personal, which, you know, goes without saying, but like, this is the lowest stakes. This is probably his least violent. I know there's a murderer, but this could have potentially gotten like a PG rating. And it's such a change of pace from both a stake and the way it presents its action that it really also shows Fujimoto really challenging himself creatively when he's just so well known for these grandiose stories with a ton of violence in them.
It also just occurred to me that the violence, the actual mentally ill guy that we see and the guy who says this stuff about it is actually Fujino imagining imagining what happened.
Yeah.
And creating a fantasy in her head about how this would work.
Manga-fied oversimplification in the context of the story of what actually happened to help her cope with her grief.
Right, like she shows up and does a flying kick into him, you know? Like
Should be noted, one of only 2 times in this entire manga that somebody breaks out of a panel.
Ooh.
I definitely missed that. But I think we've talked about how awesome the paneling is, as Geoff has said.
Yeah.
There's other things to praise about this series. And Geoff, I appreciate you keeping us on track. I could tell this could be a 3-hour recording if we don't be tight about things, so I appreciate it.
People are going to be talking about this thing for years, just like Chainsaw Man. The one thing that, like, I really think is brilliant about it is how it uses aspects of manga both within its story and as framing devices for its story.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about this in my video too, so I don't have to go into too much detail, but one of the early frames, like right after Fujino is first shocked by how good Kiyomoto's art is, she is like wandering alone and sad through this big empty field, and the field is detailed and inked in more or less exactly the same way as the art that made her feel so intimidated, and she's drawn as being really small within that.
Oh, I love that. The way that she draws people.
Yeah, the way that she draws people. Just a brilliant encapsulation of how she's feeling, why she's feeling that way. The scene setting is also perfect because it sets up this metaphor of sowing seeds that eventually grow into what you really want to do. And how, you just gotta draw a lot, stupid.
The main rule that is totally useless, but it's the one that we always get because nobody else knows what the fuck to say.
Because there is no shortcut, right?
Yeah.
Some people have a preternatural talent for moving their wrists around and making pretty drawings, but like that talent only gets you so far, as Fujino becomes increasingly aware when her comics that she spends 30 minutes on every weekend get put next to an artist who spends all their time every day drawing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's good advice. I would say the only really universally applicable advice for any artistic passion, you have to fucking do it a lot to the point where you're in danger of hating it.
The only way to get better at making art is to just make really, really bad art for a really long time, and then magically it just starts getting good.
It's like our first episodes of this podcast. They're not the best episodes ever, but they get better over time, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
Hey, have you seen my first videos? Jesus.
I know what I'm doing after.
Yeah, watch him now!
He's like unlisting them while we're recording.
I've taken away a lot from when I was in video game design school, because I took a very weird path to get to where I am. But the one thing that stuck with me, I think the hardest out of anything I learned at game design school, you need to fail faster. That is how you make great shit. You put stuff out there, you have to be willing to make something bad. You have to be willing to make something that you won't like.
Mm-hmm.
And just the more stuff you put out, the better your average level of quality will be, just by virtue of the practice.
And it's something that's really hard.
It's been really on my mind. I'm literally starting a brand new job where I have to learn all these new skills, and I know I'm going to fuck up a bunch of times before I really get the hang of everything. But that's both the scary and the exciting part about when you try and challenge yourself to grow as a person.
I totally agree. This series, I mean, it's very much about the process of becoming an artist and about the hardship that an artist experiences, both mentally and how taxing it can be. Especially with Shonen Jump is a very real thing to talk about, you know? You talk about the fucking burnout these people go through. I mean, apparently the guy from Toriko just straight up cannot draw anymore and can't write anymore, apparently, according to Build King, at least.
Jordan, we promised we wouldn't talk about Build King.
I can't not talk about it!
I think that might be a sign that maybe we should move to the next topic.
If we're on Build King.
Yeah. Let's shift to the next topic where, while this was a mini-series, let's talk about a little bit just where it could have gone if it was turned into a full series. I know you guys, in general, didn't seem to think that this really needed to go anywhere, unlike a lot of other one-shots. And for the most part, I agree, but I think if we were to make it, I think this could be a fun anthology series where maybe it's just about the lives of different manga artists, and it's really talking a lot about where do they get their inspiration from. Like, maybe he creates, 5 or 6 little fake manga, like how Bakuman had that. You first first see like maybe 10 pages of a fake manga, and then it pulls out and you learn kind of the parallels of their creative process where they got their inspiration of, which is talked about in the series a little bit, when they go to the aquarium and that inspires the series and all that scene. But I think that would be a fun way to really get into the psychology of different people and how different people approach the creative process.
I don't know.
I'm just saying if I had to say this had to turn into a series. I'm not saying that's the best idea.
I just don't think it's the best idea. The series isn't really about creating manga. The series is about the relationship between Kiyomoto and Fujino. I know you're fitting it in there, and I totally get it, but yeah, I would rather talk about, what do you think Shark Kick's like?
I want to read Shark Kick.
I want to read Shark Kick real bad. It's like Fire Punch, except if that was Beam from Chainsaw Man and he kicks instead of punches.
God, Beam is just the best character in Chainsaw Man.
Beam rules.
Beam is a delight.
What do you think? He's got like a shark demon in his heart. He's got like a little shark puppy at the beginning.
Since it's Fire Punch, maybe he's got a healing factor and then he got bit by a shark, or he just
always has a shark chewing on his leg.
No, the actual guy's just inside the shark puppeting it because he can't die. So he was just eaten by a regular shark, right? And now he's inside the shark with his, arms sticking out of the shark. And I guess the shark's got a healing factor, too, so that it doesn't die from that.
Okay, so hear me out. So you know how in Chainsaw Man, the point is that Denji is a guy who has a chainsaw dog. We all know what a chainsaw dog is.
Of course.
Who has a chainsaw dog's heart. So what if Shark Kick is a shark with a demonic man's heart? So instead of being a shark man, he's a man shark.
And this is all a prequel to Street Sharks.
Yes, exactly. This is in the same universe as Street Sharks, of course.
I had a close idea where what if it was a normal shark that was bitten by a radioactive person?
Yeah.
And he gains the power of a man. All right, let's go to miscellaneous thoughts because we're having some fun here. I know we're really low on time, so I'm just going to shotgun a few of these, and then if any of them sound like stuff you want to talk about more, please let me know. I'm happy to dive into it. Does that sound good?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I noticed, I thought it was interesting how she breaks her leg defeating the murderer, and I thought that was a cool parallel to just how Shark Kick, that's obviously his main power, so kicks were very important.
Oh, yeah.
I would say, Jordan, I think, just to go back to Time Paradox Ghost Rider, this is definitely in the same cinematic universe,
yes.
So I look forward to their crossover. Also, one thing I noticed really important is Shark Kick has the same amount of volumes as Chainsaw Man currently, which was 11. And another minor detail I thought that was really cute is when she goes into Kiyomoto's room, she actually buys multiple copies of the first and second volume as a way of financially supporting her friend.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because I actually was thinking about why she did that. I was like, oh, so she could help up the volume sales.
That has an interesting parallel with Fujino's office, where she's got all of the volumes of Shark Kick, but a bunch of volume 11s to fill out her shelf, because I think her goal is to make it much longer than that.
I mean, there's clearly some kind of number symbolism going on. Like, David, you pointed out that they make 4-panel comics, and they start in 4th grade, and as everybody knows, the word for 4 in Japanese sounds like the Japanese word for death.
Yep.
So that's a lot of symbolism is based around the number 4 in Japan, yeah.
Also, the time I think it was 2/24 when she got murdered.
2 plus 2?
That was probably a coincidence, but, if we're stretching.
You know what? No, I think he's a genius. I think it was all intentional.
Chadimoto, done it again.
The nice thing about being a genius is that, a lot of the stuff that you do accidentally, you just get credit for it anyway.
That's what my photo teacher told me, is anything you accidentally do that people think was clever was on purpose.
For sure.
Art is a function of the viewer, not the creator.
That's true.
Whenever somebody comments on one of my YouTube channels, or one of my YouTube videos with is that a reference to this thing? And I'm like, oh, that kind of works. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I intended that from the start.
Yes.
When somebody asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
Of course, that's what I say every time when I'm at Denny's. But just to finish these little nuggets up, and then you guys totally add your own. Did you guys notice that Fujimoto is facing backwards when she's in Kiyomoto's room, but then turns around after she has kind of returned to the present and stops imagining, or I guess is done that stage of grieving, for I guess a lack of a better term. You only see her back after that scene for the rest of the manga.
I did not notice that.
Whoa.
See, this is
fucking genius. Fujimoto's a fucking genius.
It's just damn, this guy actually read the series.
One thing that, that I picked up on that I thought was really funny, there's a point where they show they show Kiyomoto's art, and there's like a progression where each one underneath it is more detailed. And until I'm pretty sure the last drawing is a 3D model. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it is, and I liked that.
You think everything is a 3D model?
It's usually very apparent.
Yeah, like I tell C that all the guns in that series were 3D models superimposed over the drawing.
Oh.
For about 2 chapters, everything.
I read that one, and like, that makes sense of some of the jankiness in that art.
So here's the thing. I unironically completely love I Tell C. David does not.
Why don't we save that as a conversation for when we start uploading the audio? Because I actually was thinking about that too. I was like, I really wonder if Geoff has read it.
Yeah.
It's also like 95 degrees, so I want to turn my air conditioning on when we finish.
Yeah.
So that's also why I'm like, come on. My mic, unfortunately, does pick up my AC, which sucks.
You got to get one of these fancy XLRs so that you can have a fan on you the whole time and hopefully not even have to noise reduce it. I'm bragging now, but if there has been like an airplane whine the entire time that this podcast has been going on, I'm going to look pretty dumb.
I'm going to let you know. I'll be like, Geoff, you fucked up your audio, bud.
Re-record the whole thing!
Jordan, I left my fan on during the Red Robin Hood. I had to do some work, but I got it, so I think we'll be fine. But yeah, and then, so just last little things.
David was talking about Hunter's Guild Red Hood, listeners.
You can listen to that episode on our Patreon.
I hope that one never becomes a shonen flop, because, oh my god.
It was great.
I like it, yeah.
She's so thick! She's so thick, you guys!
She's so thick!
It's pushing boundary! Also, like, the action reminds me a lot of Chainsaw Man, and I like that, but she's so thick! What treats did you bring me today, Red Riding Hood? I brought cake, Grandma. All the fucking cake!
Geoff, we have a power word when we do these, like one chapter reviews, and I said mine was porridge because she's thicker than a bowl of oatmeal.
That's good.
Let's just move on. I'll talk about Red Hood later.
So I actually looked up the album that Don't Look Back and Anger's on, and it actually faces someone facing backwards and someone facing forward.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So I sent that to you, and Jordan was like, no, that's not that interesting. And I was like, fuck you. That was definitely on purpose.
It's definitely interesting. It's on purpose. Don't let your dreams be dreams.
I've been converted.
Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you. And then the next one is that actually Don't Look Back in Anger was the song associated with the social recovery after the 2017 Manchester arena bombing.
Oh.
That, I feel, definitely was an inspiration for why he picked that song as a reference for this.
Especially, you know, how recent that is. Fujimoto's a literary genius.
He's definitely better than Hemingway.
There's actually debate.
Well, those people are wrong.
Hemingway's fucking boring.
Yeah, bro. He just writes words without pictures, bro.
How many guys who are chainsaws are there in Hemingway books?
Not a single one!
Fucking garbage!
Right?
Trash.
All right. Oh, this has been a really great episode, Geoff. Thank you for being on it.
Shakespeare? Fuck off.
Yeah. Shakespeare, fuck that. We got Chainsaw Man.
No. Shakespeare is anime. There's lots of people almost fucking their sisters in Shakespeare.
Like Teenage Renaissance David, which had a weird incest subplot for some reason.
And piss. Lots and lots of piss.
Oh. Geoff, that is also one that if you haven't read, I think you would have some...
Which one?
Teenage Renaissance David. It's a manga about a boy who looks like the David sculpture, and everything, pretty much every other page is a reference to, like, classical art.
And I'm guessing it's incredibly stupid.
Yeah, his best friend is Mannequin Piss, which is like a piss fountain that's really famous in Belgium, and he just pees on everyone all the time.
There is so much more piss in that series than you expect there to be. Like, really.
Yeah. He rides Mannequin Piss. He propels himself by peeing so hard that he's like a hoverboard.
I love how Araki basically, like, kickstarted using Greek sculptures as inspiration for manga art. And just, like, over time, people just, like, made a bunch of manga with Greek sculptures as the characters.
One of the things in Teenage Renaissance David, Mannequin Piss is wearing Jotaro's hat.
I forgot about that detail.
Yeah.
The series actually lasts like 30 chapters, and we're pretty sure Araki was like, you can't cancel this. I'm enjoying reading it too much. And then when it kind of ran out of jokes, Araki's like, all right, you can axe it. But we're definitely over time, so why don't we go to the final verdict and shoutouts? Sound good, everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah!
Jordan, why don't you take us away with your 6-word summary, good sir?
Fujimoto is just the fucking best.
Dude, that was my 6-word summary, because mine was, wow, that was really, really good.
These are very descriptive summaries, but it's okay because it's correct.
I like how you put 2 reallys in there just to meet the... Now I feel like a chump for actually trying so hard with mine over the course of the... I've been trying to think up a really good one, and if I just, scrolled down and saw how little effort you guys put in... Anyway, mine is... Art is struggle, then you die.
That's really good.
Love it.
I will say, a lot of times we put in some really high effort ones, like mine for Red Sprite was Thunderbolts of Lightning, very, very frightening, bourgeoisie.
Perfect!
Right?
Mine was better, which was What If Luffy Was a Zionist?
Yeah, it was a really good episode for 6-word summaries.
Yeah.
I would say we either are a 10 out of 10 effort or a 3 out of 10 effort, and you just happen to catch us on one where I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go the lower road for my 6-word summary for this week.
Those are both accurate summaries of the manga.
Yeah.
Right?
What else can you say? Should I read it? Yes. Why? Fujimoto's the fucking best.
Yeah. I guess the next question I was going to ask is, should this be turned into a full series? But I think we're all in agreement that even trying to stretch this into a continuation isn't a good idea.
Most one-shots are kind of possible prototypes or pilots. This is not a pilot. This is really just a 145-page graphic novel.
This is 145 pages of Fujimoto working through some shit so he can get back to making Chainsaw Man.
Yeah, this was just something he had to get out of his system. Jeff, when you said this is 140, I thought you were going to say the 145 chapters as David put it.
I'll give you a pass because each of these pages is as dense as a chapter of another manga.
Absolutely.
Nope, I'm not going to talk about Bill King and how fucking much I hate those dense-ass pages. Our last little discussion is talking a little bit about Time Paradox Ghost Rider, because I honestly would say, since obviously there's not going to be more stories like this, our show hasn't sold you enough, now is really the time to read Time Paradox Ghost Rider, which has to do a lot with this. And then, Jeff, have you had any experience with that series?
I love it. I put it in a video, and then it got canceled.
I know, right?
I really loved it. The art was beautiful. The messages that it was trying to send about not overworking yourself and its exploration of imposter syndrome were really interesting. Just the fact that it chose to frame itself around a kind of plagiarism ended up dooming it just because people just couldn't vibe with the main character doing something that's kind of amoral, but understandable in the context that if that happened to you, you'd think it was a dream, but also just
really was a level of nuance that people weren't really willing to put into it.
I really like that, but comparing it to this, I do think that this is a far better exploration of the manga creation process.
Oh, for sure.
Time Paradox Ghost Rider is more a very interesting what-if question paired with an escapist fantasy that really only applies to a manga artist. And the escapist part of that is completely lost on the audience who are just why would you plagiarize? That's terrible. And then the further takeaway message of don't overwork and
the desperation aspect that pushes him to plagiarize,
Yeah, but it also had to be really rushed to fit any of what it wanted to say into its length. But this is just, despite being shorter, does a much better job, I think, of portraying how much work actually goes into making a good manga. Time Paradox Ghost Rider tells us that they're working really hard on it, but it also shows us the main character repeatedly completing an entire manuscript in one night.
Yeah.
Anybody who can do that does not have to worry about getting a job in the manga industry.
That's fair.
I'm sorry, but that guy's editor giving him advice well, I don't know, you got to do something that's more personal. Easily that guy could get work for any major company making manga based on established properties.
You're really gonna tell me that Shonen Jump cares this much about being personal when they ran Beast Children?
Oh, God.
I haven't read that one.
Beast Children is, from a critical perspective, the worst thing. This art, if someone told me a 15-year-old made this series, I would believe it. It is probably the worst drawn series I've ever read in Shonen Jump. And it literally ran for the Rugby World Cup, and it was canceled the week the Rugby World Cup ended.
It's about rugby, we should say.
It's about rugby, and they don't play rugby for the first 15 chapters. Or the first 10 chapters or something crazy like that.
I'm just Googling this now, and it, for real looks like somebody made a manga out of in-betweens from the anime adaptation of this manga.
It's real bad!
It's so bad it's good, though. If you want to just read, the bottom of the barrel Shonen Jump, that's why it's worth reading.
The best part, if you do read it, you will immediately notice that the rugby ball, it's the same photo of a rugby ball used every single time, and it's just resized to fit it.
I'm looking at two pieces of promo art back to back, and yeah, no, it's like the same Gilbert ball, just one of them has been palette swapped to red and like given a little bit more like rough texture on it, but it's exactly the same ball at a slightly different angle.
Every single time!
I just looked at a panel and there it is again! Right? He just like took that photo and then just like, I guess, combined the smudge and erase tools to give it like motion blur. Oh my god, what is this hack bullshit?
You should just stream yourself reading and giving commentary in real time of Beast Children. That's the best way your audience can experience it.
The thing about Beast Children as opposed to Tokyo Shinobi Squad is that they're both terrible, but I kind of love Beast Children, you know?
And Beast Children gave us the Sora. We've noticed, Geoff, that sometimes a series is very bad, but it has one character that's like at least a C quality. And there's one character named Sora in Beast Children who is the only character the author puts any effort into being like a remotely interesting character. He's taking a piss with like the main bad guy, and he just straight up turns around and he says, "Why are you such an asshole to my friend?"
That's great.
That's the only good instance of good writing in that entire series.
Decent writing. It stands as contrast to the trash on everything else.
But I think since we're getting into things people should check out, why don't we actually migrate to shoutouts? Unless anyone has any final thoughts they want to say about Time Paradox Ghost Rider or Look Back.
The thing about Time Paradox Ghostwriter and the thing about Look Back is that Look Back really isn't about the manga creation process.
No.
It's about the people who make the manga. And I think that, in that sense, the fact that it is about people, you know, on like a deeper emotional level, if you successfully do that, that is always going to be like the pinnacle of what you can do. Like, because I feel like the point of art and the point of all mediums of art is to build a human connection. Mm-hmm. It's to see something and just feel like it resonates with you, and the deeper point at which it resonates with you, the better that it is. Look Back just resonates with me, and it seems like a lot of other people on just such an emotional core level. Because even if you don't care about art, you're not an artist or anything, you relate to the grief, you relate to the struggles, because you struggle, everybody struggles in other aspects of their lives. And what can I say? Turns out this is actually like a good series.
I am hard-pressed to think of a better one that I've read, only differently good manga.
Yeah.
I feel like about this manga the same way that I feel about like Spider-Verse and Roger Rabbit as movies, in that like you can make a movie that's different than those, but I don't think that it's physically possible for a human being to make a better movie-going experience than those two movies.
I really love Spider-Verse. I was so excited when it won the Oscar.
It's peak fiction. In like one volume, this does more than most things Shonen Jump has ever published. And that's not a knock against most things Shonen Jump has ever published. It's just a testament to how good this is.
It's like, well, this is manga and then this is literature. It feels like.
I think that's a really great way to like really...
to end it, yeah.
Yeah. So you guys ready though to go to sign-offs?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Props to Jordan for making the opening and ending theme and being a great co-host. Props to Shannon for the awesome cover art. You can find her online at illuminyatea, and Nigel for being our generous art benefactor. Thanks to Tucker for assistance with pronunciation, translation, and other miscellaneous research. Thanks to Nicole and Audie for helping with social media. And if you haven't yet, be sure to join the Shonen Flop Discord. Come hang out with us and talk about anime, games, or whatever else is on your mind. We also have a book club and do regular movie nights. You can find a link to it in our show notes. Hey y'all, this is David from the future stepping in. We've launched our Patreon, and we really would appreciate if you check it out and consider being a patron. We have some awesome exclusive content like mini episodes, audios, drama, and deleted scenes. You also can even help us pick what series we cover next. I also really want to give a shout out to our Chainsaw Man level patron, Mavery. The series that they picked is going to be coming sometime in October, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a really great guest in the episode, so you sure picked a heck of a time to become a Chainsaw patron. If you didn't know, that level actually lets you just pick a series for us to cover within reason, but still, it's pretty awesome that you actually explicitly can pick a series we're going to cover. I also wanted to say that we finally had our merch store get expanded. We have some art from some of our favorite episodes, including the infamous Gomez Moon shirt and the picture of Mashal punching out Harry Potter. They're pretty awesome, and even if you don't want a shirt, you can get them as mugs, prints, whatever kind of merch catches your fancy. All right, Now back to the episode as I fade out. Ooh. And a reminder, if you've been enjoying the show, to please like, rate, review, and share it. It really helps us a ton. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ShonenFlopcast and our website, shonenflop.com. We're also on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever else you get your podcasts. But above all, Geoff, I want to just sincerely thank you so much for being on the show. This was a ton of fun. And where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at G0FFTHEW because I made that when I was too young to understand what a good Twitter handle was. You can also find me on YouTube at youtube.com/mothersbasement or just search Mother's Basement on YouTube. I make lots and lots of good videos about anime, or I think they're good anyway.
I think they're good too.
I think they're good too. Yeah.
Your Shrek video, man? Love that video. I sent that to everybody.
I really appreciate that. I'm really proud of that one in particular. Also, the Space Jam one. I like doing shit posts. I like doing extremely high effort shit posts.
I loved the Space Jam one. That was really good. Like,
I have to watch that.
It is an isekai. Hey,
the time I got reincarnated as Michael Jordan.
my favorite isekai is Army of Darkness.
Yes. So, out of my recent stuff, I think all my vidges are pretty good. If you're looking for anime to watch every season, I put out a series called Ones to Watch, where I just watch every single anime that's airing in a given season and talk about how good and or, just existing it is. I break down the 10 that are the best, and then I throw some honorable mentions in. I do actually watch every single anime every single season, so that's a lot of work.
God.
Holy shit, you fucking legend.
Yeah, so out of my recent videos, I would say check out my Metabots one. Not a lot of people will watch that.
I watched the fuck out of Metabots. I watched the fuck out of Metabots, dude. I'm gonna watch your video because I love Metabots.
I watch every video you put out, so at least you have one person that watches them.
Oh, thank you. I got at least a few, but I would say check out my Metabots video if you want to hear about a piece of fiction that is just also transcends the boundaries of what you would expect of its format in its own way, that format being Pokemon-style weekly children's shows, and the reason it transcends that being that, most of the best artistic talent in the anime industry in the 90s all came together to work on that thing at once. So, literally Masaki Yuasa, the whole crew that is currently at Trigger, it's insane how good the animation in it is. And then the other video that I would suggest people check out is Chainsaw Man is underhyped, actually.
Not anymore.
No, you cannot overhype Chainsaw Man or even adequately hype Chainsaw Man without spoiling its ending.
That is fair.
Which is why I felt confident saying that. But also, it's just a really good video talking about Chainsaw Man. So,
Well, again, we don't know anything about Chainsaw.
I've never watched an episode of Chainsaw Man in my life.
You can also find me on TikTok. That's another place where I've been doing mini manga analysis stuff. The one that I did of Makima in Chainsaw Man has been taken down and will have to be re-edited and put back up. I just haven't had time to do that yet.
She likes to do... I almost said a huge spoiler, so never mind.
Control yourself, buddy.
Oh, fuck you. All right.
But you can find me on TikTok. It's at Geoff Thew. Just GeoffThew. Yes, that is a valid way to spell Jeff. In fact, it's the only valid way to spell Jeff. The J's are a false and blasphemous... Please cut me off. Please cut me off.
Mr. Jones.
Geoff Tate, my favorite Queensryche singer.
Have you ever introduced yourself as Geoff and just say it to a group of people, but say it to one person, and when they call you Geoff, everyone be like, do you not know how that name is pronounced?
I got it a lot through elementary school. The reason that my Twitter handle is G0FF is because that's Geoff Thew at gmail.com.
Whoa.
And I just tried to embrace people saying my name wrong. Mm-hmm. People pointed out to me that Geoff as a nickname, just depending on how you hyphenate it, gets a little lewd. So,
oh, jeez.
I moved on from that.
Sorry again for mispronouncing your name the first time.
It's better than J-Off.
It's also better than Jethro.
You know why you spell your name like that? Because you're a straight G.
Why, shucks. Thank you.
Aww. Thank you so much, Geoff, for coming on our show. And thank you so much, David, for editing. And you should thank me for also editing, because now we're sharing that fucking job.
You're right. We should add that as a note in the Chibi episode. But yeah, so yeah, thank you again, Geoff. This was awesome. This was a long time. I think we talked about this in like last November, so I'm really glad we could finally get this to happen.
I'm glad too. I like helping to support people who are trying to establish their own brand in this space.
Oh.
It's hard to make it in anime starting out. You know, I hope this is helpful to you guys. I'm sorry it took so long.
No worries at all.
You literally have to watch every single anime that ever comes out, so, like, clearly your schedule is all booked up, so, I mean...
I'll be completely honest, it was a little bit of a challenge, but, like, as soon as we got in the episode, like, within, like, the first 2 minutes of you heard me typing, I was like, Jordan, this is, like, gonna be, like, a fucking awesome episode. So, absolutely, I really appreciate you coming by.
And thank you for inviting me on, because I had, like, a lot of fun talking with you guys. It was a good time.
I'm so glad to hear.
Speaking of helping people out, just one last thing is I just want to give some shout outs to, in particular, some really awesome guests we've had on the show. These are people that I really consider really great friends I've made through the podcast. So I just want to start with the Nerd Alternative, Hassan. He is the nicest guy in podcasting. He was on our Double Arts episode, and his podcast, The Nerd Alternative. It's a Black British podcast taking a look at the weird and wonderful in the vast expanse of nerddom from anime, books, movies, games, and TV. They cover it all. The next one I want to give a shout out to is Jordan's friend Tre. He was on our Hungry Joker episode. Awesome guy. He actually helped me arrange a wedding gift for a friend of mine who I don't think he listens to this podcast, so it's going to be a really awesome surprise. So thank you again, Tre. That was amazing. You were able to put me in contact with that esports celebrity to do a wedding shout out for him. And you can find his YouTube at Tre Watson Music. And of course, there'll be a link to this and everything else in the description. Next one is another friend of Jordan's. I guess Jordan just knows the best people in podcasting.
I just have friends.
Jakey, he and Hassan up there with the nicest guys. We'll have to make a tier list. No, I'm just kidding. But he was on our Dark Age. He was like our 5th guest ever. And he wanted me to give a shout out to Hearts Against Balance, an actual play podcast playing
Interstitial.
There we go. Yeah, it's a form of Judaism. Our hearts intertwine. Tony DMs a cast of some of our favorite characters in their venture to defeat the evil Mickey Mouse. So I guess this is a Kingdom Hearts spinoff.
Interstitial is a...
Riley, yeah, that dude was awesome too. Yeah, that was a great episode. He invented the Riley method, which I might use in Build King, where you read 1 in 3 chapters and see if anyone notices. He skipped 1 in 3 chapters of Beachy because that series sucked. But yeah, so you can find him at stonygrotto.com/HAB. Next, I want to give a shout out to Anime Out of Context. So Sean, super awesome dude. As I talked about, this is one of the guests that I was a really big fan of his work even before he was on the show. He was on our Teenage Renaissance David episode, so another reason to listen to it if our description talking about it with Geoff didn't sound strange enough already. You can listen to him now as Sean explores the sometimes weird, sometimes wonderful, and always hilarious world of anime, and Remington tries to understand any of it. And you can find them at Anime Out of Context. We're actually going to be on that show, so hopefully if in the next few weeks you'll find us on an episode. I don't know what we're going to talk about yet. It's going to be exciting. Probably we'll be listening to something dog shit given what we had to force him to read, so that's probably returning the favor. Hopefully it's not filled with as much piss and incest as Teenage Renaissance David, which again, the incest part, just, Sean, I'm sorry, that was not on purpose. We did not intentionally try and find the one series about incest that you were happen to be on, because apparently that's like, you keep running into incest anime.
Also, for what it's worth, that was not the worst series we've covered on this fucking show.
It was the worst incest-based series, or series with incest.
The most incesty, yeah.
Finally, though, I want to give a shout out to Kami Jace. If there was ever a person that helped us on day one, it was him. I remember when we posted a pod, he messaged us. He said, yo, give me a promo. I'll run it on my show. He runs a weekly cooldown. He was on our Guardian of the Witch, and I'm just going to run a promo for what he's working on now.
Hello, hello, hello. My name's Najee. Most people know me as Kami Jace, and I host the Weekly Cooldown. It's a podcast where we get to know the gaming news of the week, and we get to know our guests. Every week is a different streamer, cosplayer, game developer, podcaster, and overall giant nerd. We sit down, we discuss the big stories, the small stories, and everything else in between. If you want to keep up to date on the news and want to have a fun time doing so, listen to the Weekly Cooldown on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Anchor, or wherever you get your podcasts.
These were really terrific people. Sorry, we only had so much room. There was definitely a ton of people I wish we could have had as promos on this episode, but just know we're always thinking of you guys. And if you ever want to be given a promo, especially if you're active in the Discord, just feel free to send me a DM. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been David.
This has been Jordan.
This has been Geoff.
And you've been listening to Shonen Flop.
Keep on flopping, floppers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel unclean.